Okay, so want to be finding out how we stop Copilot from surfacing salary data, but it's really also just sensitive data. And there's some ideas here, which is about which prompts work versus don't work. Is there a difference between the types of prompting to surface data? And I think I've run into a couple of ways that you can do this, which is one is exhaustion. So I actually managed to get it to just ask and ask. I think also is adjacent style prompting, where you ask it to, you don't ask it directly, you ask it subtly, and it'll bring up with. I think you also have the Purview setup, which is essentially which users and groups can access the data. Now, is there anything else for Copilot surfacing sensitive data? You've got prompts, you've got the data access, the files and sharing permissions. Actually, that's probably separate. The files and sharing permissions per file group SharePoint site. Is it open, domain wide? How old is it? The thing about Copilot is that you access files that are old and lost, but easy to surface via context by an LLM. So poses a threat to old optimized SharePoint instances. So what do we want to find out? Let's think about it. So how does Purview secure permissions? How does Copilot protect against prompt injections and manage Purview access rights? What if you don't have Purviews up? I'll research this stuff in a bit. I may even use Copilot to figure this out. I'll just run this through it. Let's just open this up on the side and talk about it. I'm going to copy all this and push it into Copilot and see what it comes up with. I'm just going to go to task and say, can you help me? I think first of all, I want to frame some questions to help with what I want to find out. And then task 2 is answer the questions I had below and the new questions you created above in task 1. Now, I don't know whether this is good to do. Can you not specify? Okay, it's GPT 5.2. I don't know whether I need to step-by-step this. Maybe it's useful. Let's just run it and see what happens. So what I'm expecting here is, first of all, go research this stuff that I want to find out, and also figure out, like, how do we find out more about this stuff? And this is a typical workflow that I'll do with some web research agent style thing, whether I've programmed it myself or not. Okay, so it's giving us quite a lengthy answer, which is good. Got a couple of links that we'll run through in a second, but I'm also just going to, like, off the cuff this and keep it going. These are some good questions to keep in mind. These are more specific questions that, as an IT director, you can have control over. What I found is that when you add layers of protection or abstraction of user permissions, I don't know whether Copilot plays as nicely as more generic blanket term stuff, but I don't know. It's something we'll be finding out as we go. Yeah, this seems fine. Yeah, this is stuff that we've been working on with our Copilot security scanner, you know, how you find old data and surface it and analyze it from an IT perspective. Yeah, the problem with this is I've tried this. It even plays funny when you've got access to the file. And it has a prompt filtering, which we have up here under filtering overview. I'm going to read through in a sec. So is there a difference between prompt types to surface data? So it says security trimmed. the actual issue here is that you may have hidden permissions by a graph that allow users to see old shared links or sites without knowing about it. It's all good and clear if you have sites that have been set up recently and everyone knows their permissions, but what about all the old ones, right? And whether that's something that needs to be looked at. So how does Purview actually secure permissions? Purview adds on sensitivity labels, which is essentially a form of abstracting files and folders and SharePoint sites into various different sensitivity categories that allow people to have domain-wide access to certain sites for work functionality, but then the specific things can't access because it's too sensitive, which makes tons of sense, right? Container labels, data loss prevention. So exclude label files from processing almost becomes like implementation problematic where Copilot can't be as useful as it should be. You have multiple functionalities blocking people's access. That just can't work, right? Was it blocking access to files? But then from a security perspective, as an IT admin, you're actually pretty happy about this because you are just securing yourself. What isn't obvious here is that there isn't an obvious test suite to run through your SharePoint and say, how vulnerable is it? What situations are we at risk to? So that's something we should definitely be building on our side. Labeling stuff is a new process, I think, for a lot of companies, or relatively new thing. So yeah, I guess we'll have to see how that plays out. Companies that went, we talked to a law company, and they were using sensitivity labels, and probably is in the law and contract space quite obvious. However, in more traditional logistics, manufacturing, engineering kind of businesses that are quite large, they might not necessarily need to run into sensitivity labels because there wasn't a ton of sensitive data under GDPR running through the business. There's obviously some IP that's under lock and keep, but it's about sort of knowing what access is out there. Going back to the Copilot thing, DPSM for AI provides customer sites and corporate policies to reduce oversharing. Oh, this looks interesting. We'll open this up. Cool. That makes sense. I'll have a look at it. Which using group can access existing MS365 Copilot connectors. So it's all sitting on top of what was previously accessible. Now, obviously, this is where the issue is, right? It's like the idea is what was previously accessible doesn't mean that everyone has it under lock and knows what's going on. How old is it? Okay, so it's red team against engineering practices. I have actually seen that 1 week I could surface salary data that wasn't supposed to be surfaced to me because it had a specific sensitivity label, and now it won't give it to me, which is great. What if you don't have Purview set up? Still respects your existing permissions, but you lack the extra breaks. No label bases, no DLP, less possible sites. This DLP seems to be controlled internally, so IT teams can self-administer security protocols, which is nice. I think that's pretty essential for understanding what insecure and secure prompts look like is actually problematic. Yeah, so this is the general gist of what everyone wants to be doing. The people that we're speaking to are doing this actively. Quick takeaways. Let's add some headers. Okay, so stop it from surfacing sensitive data. Find out which prompts work versus don't. What's the purview setup? Label schema, controls, enable DLP. Which user groups have access to the data? Get rid of the sources here. Let me just do find replace. Just do learn dot. Okay. Let's just through a webinar. So what we've got here is we know there's security measures going on. Purview obviously opens up the accessibility to be more programmatic and deliberate about how you allow Copilot access to certain data. I think you could always share your data. From a data security perspective, the unearthing and access of sensitive information that's often forgotten seems to be the biggest point here. But let's go and have a look at content filtering overview. Let's just have a little Copilot overview here. So it uses its own service, which makes sense. Oh, block sample content. Right, so I want to do data security and privacy. Interesting. So this is sort of prompt injection defenses and stuff, semantic indexing. Let's have a look at what this is. Indexes against your data to understand what you're about. If anything falls out of this, then it'll say no thank you. Okay, so it can actually analyze a lot of the data as well and understand it semantically. Interesting. Great. This is wicked. This is a great piece. That's very useful. Let's plug this in because that's super useful for a lot of people that I know. Awesome. So SharePoint Insights. You can exclude content search and SharePoint Insights. That seems great because you can review some of the stuff that have been sent out and then identify these via oldest date, sort by oldest date. This is something I'm going to share with a couple of people. Great. Okay, cool. That's the semantic indexing and turning off the indexing of certain information. How is this working? Service boundary. Okay. Cool. This is all about vectorization. Okay, cool. I get that. That makes sense. So let's keep an eye on what this is. Security, containment by design. Entry ID and purview. Yeah, this is the stuff. So it respects entry ID, and this is a big part of our issue. The thing that people are restricting is actually this, which is the Microsoft 365 Copilot connectors overview. We're going to have a look at all of those Copilot connectors. You can create your own. Okay. That's interesting. This is definitely a side one for us. This is wicked. If you have a custom data set, if you have an on-prem database that you need to hook into via VPN, you can access it through this because it will just be connecting to an API, which you can VPN and protect via a port. It's great. Easy. Connectors gallery here. It's quite a lot. So the thing that I'm running through here is when I'm talking to IT admins, how are we protecting while still implementing AI? And I think stage rollouts of connectors is a really good one, especially when you've got custom connectors. And I guess you just want to manage what comes out in Excel, Outlook, all that kind of stuff. Now, we started off with how do we stop Copilot from surfacing sensitive data? What we're building here is a mini workbook of what we should be thinking about and what's actually out there to help us avoid problems. If we summarize, the answer seems to be stage the connectors, add your purview, check your permissions and all of your SharePoint sites and access files, unearth all the old ones and go through them. Use the services in Copilot to understand the data. They already do a lot of semantic vectorization of the data, so they have access to it. And then there's a lot of services that they're building into MS365, which allow you to be granular if you need to. There's stuff like this that is more important. And I think it does start from the access layer of each individual at the core. And that's the bit that you edit via Purview and DLP and content filtering. I think that's a good research piece where if I sat down with someone, I would have a good place to start where you can go into SharePoint and gradually decrease and increase the amount of access that people have. That's pretty cool. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. If you need help with this, let us know. Be happy to sit down with you and work out exactly what your security measures should be.